That's very important information. Very right. Are there any other corrections or additions? They stand approved as they will be amended. Okay, we're going to recognize our guests, and I hope everybody could find their name tag out there. They're pink for our guests. The first one is Erin McCarley, who is the guest of Ann Orsi. Please stand up. Welcome. Maddie Clock, who is the daughter and guest of Mary Lowe Kennedy. Welcome. Martha Chowning Goff, the daughter of Joan Campbell, who is a 20-year member of the Aesthetic Club, and she's the guest of Beth Nice. Welcome. Janet Oslin, the sister and guest of Jill Jones. There you are. Welcome. And last but not least, Catherine Curley, the daughter and guest of Karen Merriman. Welcome. Is there anyone else? Is there another guest here I didn't name? And we'll have to figure out how to get a pink name tag too. Okay. Well, our hostess of the day chair is Marilyn Porter, and she was a perfect pick by the program committee for our art day because she's quite a collector and an aficionado of art. She's looking kind of grim over there. Come on up, Marilyn, and tell us all about the decorations.
Hi, everybody. My name is Marilyn Porter, and I'm hostess of the day along with Hayden Rather. Hayden, thank you to her. I'll make this very fast since I have 2 minutes. My very first job I ever had was at the Art Center as a PR person, and I watched Ted and Virginia Bailey buy an Edward Hopper. I was engaged. I went home to my to-be, and I said, you know, Rob, we need to have something in common besides our children, which we didn't have because we weren't married yet. I said, let's collect art. And then he found out what I'd just seen at the Art Center, and it terrified him. Having done that, we've had a great life of collecting, but what I want to show you is how art is always moving, even if it's like Picasso or something. They were always moving. You have examples that the other people can say. And so I'm going to talk really loud right now. And this is a sculpture piece that is mine, and it's from Kevin Box, a guy that's in. He actually has a piece in our sculpture garden. It's an origami bird. You know him. He lives in Tucson. And the name of this is Isadora Stress. And the second thing I brought to show you how things can always change with art. Over here on the mantle, you see it says the Democratic National Committee Presidential Gala. The local picture. I have one at home that's signed by Rob Reed, who is the artist, the Blue Dog artist, and the members of the committee. But this poster was never seen because the Blue Dogs left the Democratic Party and became Republicans. So you never know how they do. The last thing I'm going to point out are how art is sometimes acceptable and sometimes not. This painting I found in a barn in Temple, Arkansas. And it was done by a woman who became the administrator of the Mississippi WPA. And then she became she did the art people for a while. The name is Carolyn Collins. And this type of painting comes in and out of style for obvious reasons of slavery or whatever massive things that come to go and don't do. Now this one, which is actually another rendering of black folks, I don't think it ever goes out of style. This is on a board. And it's just, this is a real faux art because we don't know who did it. You can tell by the way to get it. But so both of these are renderings of another type of painting. these are kind of ones of my favorites. I'll be correct with this. My sons made these in camp. And they're now 40 years old. But I just thought, every single thing, anything you want, if it's a little baby drawing or somebody finds that and it's, whatever, it's on if you love it. And the last thing is, I don't usually wear this. As the book that, oh, sorry, that Ralph Johnson is called Artists and what they wrote, but I'll let you say that right. And thank y'all.
You have some items up here, Marilyn. Lipstick, comb, pocketbook. Our committee report is from Tandy Cobb, the Entertainment Committee, and she's going to talk about the Founders Reception. Tandy, come on up.
Hello, everybody. I got to say a few words at the meeting before last, but I didn't have the list of my committee members, and I really want to acknowledge them, and I've got the list this time. So I'm going to call your name out, committee members. If you're here, please bob up. If not, we'll just think of where they might be and wish them well. So this is the Entertainment Committee. Christine Althoff, Susan Bornay, Catherine Caldwell, Jan Cottingham, Mary B. Gross, Island Hicks, Vicki Jacoby, Judy Johnson, Lisa McNair, Jane Madden, and Catherine Weiss. And my co-chair is Buff Easterly. We are having so much fun, and I feel so lucky to be a part of this group. We met last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago, and we're working hard on the Founders Day reception in January. Remember, Founders Day, we eat cake. So all through the holidays, say to yourself, I have 7 cakes to eat in January, and kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Also, we wear hats. And so either start going to vintage places looking for a hat that our founders might have worn, or as you're scanning Amazon for that last gift, check out hats. Thank you so much, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Tandy. In other business, the club contribution to the museum will be made on December 10th and presented to Stephen McAteer, the executive director. So be here for that. And Jeffrey also had a reminder about the hat, so obviously that's very important for the January 28th meeting. So be finding your hat. And now we're going to introduce the chairman of the day, Ann Morning Pinnock. Ann is another excellent pick from the program committee. Very impressive picks. She's been a member since 2016 and served as recording secretary in 21 to 23. Her third and most recent paper for Founders Day was Snooky, I'm Anxious to Show You Arkansas, featuring the artistic path of cartoonist George Fisher and his wife Rosemary Fisher, a widely known pottery maker. Ann is retired from UALR, where she was Senior Director of Development, having secured the second largest gift in UALR history, $20.3 million, to build the Wingate Arts and Design Building. The facility is now home to studios and classrooms for students in the Applied Design program. Her interest in the visual arts led her to writing a monthly arts feature for Heights Living magazine for several years. She met dozens of local artists and loved telling the story of their art journey to her readers. And always a supporter of the performing arts, Anne served as chair of the Repertory Theater Board and is now a member of the advisory board. These days, she pursues her passion for the arts by visiting art museums and volunteering with the Dirt Divers, I love that, gardening group at the Prospect Terrace City Park in her neighborhood. I met Anne many years ago, and our paths cross all the time in different clubs and groups and church. And I called her to touch base because I knew that Jeffrey would want me to do that. I'm trying to be a good follower of Jeffrey. I asked her about art and realized quickly that she is a lover of all forms of art, performing, visual, literary, you name it. She has been involved in all of them. But she also wanted to write a book. That's a little literary art. And she found her outlet in this monthly feature writing that she did for 5 years. I mean, that's 60 feature articles. That's big. That's a book to me. I asked Jeffrey for a little comment about Anne, and she said, "Anne is the aesthete I strive to be." And that is high praise from our President Jeffrey. Please join me in welcoming Anne Morning-Pinnock, Chairman of the Day.
Thank you, Jennifer, for that lovely introduction. Good afternoon, Madam Secretary, guests, and fellow esteetes. Brandon Boyd works as a singer and songwriter. His other life's work is that of a painter. Having published 3 books of his visual art, he is credited with today's quote, "Art is everywhere and everywhere is art." Eileen Hicks is our first presenter, having joined Aesthetes in 2019, and this will be her second paper. She is the retired UALR Theater and Dance Department Chair and also served on faculties of the University of Tulsa and Tulane University. As a theatrical costume designer and educator, she has worked throughout the U.S. and has dressed hundreds of people in all sorts of clothing. Now retired, she works in the fascinating world of children's clothing. Her 34-year university teaching career in costume design makes Eileen Hicks the perfect member to present the topic, Artists, the Clothes They Wear. Eileen?
Madam Chair, Madam President, fellow aesthetes and guests, I wonder what determined your choice of attire today. Did the weather figure into your selection, or perhaps thoughts about the company you'll keep on this particular day? Maybe a doctor's visit preceded this meeting, and easy access to the body underneath determined your choices. Most individuals living on Earth have at least one thing in common. We will dress to confront the day, and our choices, to some extent, will be conditioned by years of evolutionary programming, societal norms, and cultural values. Legendary New York Times fashion reporter Bill Cunningham said, "Fashion is the armor to survive everyday life." The springboard for the topic of my paper is the book Legendary Artists, The Clothes They Wore by Terry Newman, published by Harper Design in 2019. Ms. Newman identifies a rich variety of individuals who have used fashion to further distinguish themselves as artists. Each artist profiled today thought of herself as a living canvas. Allow me to begin with Tamara de Lempicka, who was born into the Polish and cultural elite in 1898. Tamara was educated at a boarding school in Switzerland and traveled with her grandmother to Italy, where her interest in art blossomed. Afterwards, she moved to St. Petersburg, where her wealthy aunt offered additional access to society. There, she married her first husband. The Russian Revolution forced the couple to flee to Paris. There, Tamara enrolled in art school and developed a style called synthetic cubism, in which compositions emphasize flatness and the arrangement of shapes and colors. Most importantly, she came to embody in her work the Art Deco ideal. Lempicka painted the bright young things, the flamboyant, decadent, rebellious, and glamorous party set that was obsessed with jazz. She was herself a bright young thing. Her milieu was the glittering Paris of the years between the wars, a place of high style and lascivious behavior. Lempicka loved fashion and dressed to impress. She wore Chanel and Schiaparelli, but favored the Parisian house of Marvel Rochas, the first designer of skirts with pockets, and one of the two designers, along with Elsa Schiaparelli, who in 1931 launched the fashion for padded shoulders. Lempicka became a prime interpreter of modernity. My goal was never to copy, but to create a new style, bright, luminous colors, and to scent out the elegance in my models. In 1928, Lempicka received a commission for a cover painting from the German magazine Die Dame, the Lady, the first German illustrated magazine that catered to the interests of the modern woman. The painting she submitted was a self-portrait called Tamara in a Green Bugatti. She sits in the luxury car, her head covered by an Hermes driving hood, her arms encased in leather gloves, her abundant cream scarf arranged in geometric folds. Her knowing eyes meet the viewer's gaze directly. Die Dame declared that Lempicka was a symbol of women's liberation. Lempicka was openly bisexual. She acquired many lovers who were both her subjects and her patrons. She lived the quintessential bohemian life, first in Paris and later in America. One of Lempicka's works, painted in 1927 or 1929, Young Lady with Gloves, is an embodiment of a time and a style. The woman is as much a construct as she is an individual, flawless, fashionable, unapproachable. Despite the stylistic angularity, Lempicka captures a sense the fabric in the dress is moving in the breeze. It conveys the subtle eroticism of her subject's curves. Lempicka is perhaps best known for depicting and dressing herself as the ideal woman of the 1920s, elegant, independent, modern, and sexually liberated. Her portraits of sleek, stylish women in luxurious clothing and accessories have inspired countless designers. Her bold colors, geometric shapes, and strong shoulders have been adopted by Gucci, Saint Laurent, Dior, and Versace. Louise Nevelson was born in Ukraine in 1899. She immigrated with her family to Rockland, Maine in 1905. After marrying, she moved in 1920 with her husband to New York City and then to Westchester County. Disappointed in her staid, traditional marriage, she left her wealthy husband and son and moved to a lower Manhattan neighborhood where independent poverty was preferable to what she termed enslavement. Nevelson studied at the Art Students League in 1929 and 1930. In 1933, she worked as Diego Rivera's assistant when he was making his 21 panels of murals for New York City's New Workers' School. She had an affair with him until discovery by his wife, the artist Frida Kahlo. Nevelson's calling, however, was sculpture, a genre considered the domain of men, supposedly because of the physicality needed to work in 3 dimensions. Her work can be described as open-faced wooden boxes that are stacked to make freestanding walls. Within the boxes are carefully arranged and highly suggestive collections of abstract-shaped objects mingled with found items. The assemblage is monochromatic in color and most often black. Nevelson's compositions explore the relational possibilities of objects in space. While she achieved recognition in the 1940s, she was excluded from the men's club of great success until she was well into her 50s. Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art owns monumental work completed between 1969 and 1974 called the Night Zag Wall. Regarding the clothing she wore, Nevelson said, "I'd love to put things together. My whole life is one big collage. Every time I put on clothes, I am creating a picture, a living picture for myself." Another source documents her self-styling. "I'm what you call a real collage. I think you very carefully can identify a person by their appearance. It's important. It's not skin deep. It's much deeper. So I think that because of their, not mine, their preconceived notions that an artist had to look, that the older and uglier they looked, the more they were convinced that there was a dedication." Well, that again is preconceived cliches. That's what I've been trying to break down all my life. Nevelson also observed, "Being well-dressed is not a question of having expensive clothes or the right clothes. I don't care if you're wearing rags, but they must suit you. If you think you're not put together well, you can't confront the world." Nevelson's iconic sartorial presence was defined by her skilled mixing and matching of ethnic clothing, as well as her penchant for mink eyelashes, which were as emblematic of the New York art scene as Andy Warhol's white wig. In the 1930s and 40s, she was known as the Hat because of her affinity for gorgeous chapeaux. In addition to her Russian babushkas, she wore a black jockey helmet, a 10-gallon Stetson, and a wide-brimmed face-framing sun hat. While Nevelson frequently wore costume and ethnic jewelry throughout her life, her theatrical ensembles and daring personal style eventually landed her a spot on the 1977 International Best Dressed list. The artist's handmade, dark, asymmetric, jagged necklaces were as synonymous with her eccentric image as were her enormous false eyelashes. Throughout her life, she created some 200 jewelry pieces that are part of various public and private collections around the world. Nevelson's jewelry echoes the imaginative depth and complexity that define her sculptures and collages. She employed unorthodox materials such as fishing floats, wood scraps, and flattened tin cans. As Dorothy G. Seckler wrote of Nevelson in Art in America in 1967, "One does not for a moment forget that this woman conducts her life to the measure of grandeur. Her clothes, like her decor, make large concessions to comfort, but none to mode." Yayoi Kusama is one of the few women who consistently rank among the highest-selling living artists by both sales volume and value. Kusama was born in Matsumoto, Japan in 1929. She is renowned for her prolific and groundbreaking creative work, including paintings, sculptures, performances, moving images, large-scale installations, fashion, and writing. A central aspect of the now 95-year-old Yayoi Kusama's work is her lifelong mental illness and how she has created and used art to understand herself. The artist's mother was physically and mentally abusive, and her father was a serial philanderer. Her mother would often send her to spy on her father's sexual encounters with various women, which resulted in a lifelong contempt for sexuality. Her creative activity was highly discouraged by her mother, who often ripped up her drawings before she was finished. When Kusama was 10 years old, she began to experience hallucinations in which flowers or patterns in fabric would speak to and engulf her. One day I was looking at the red flower patterns of the tablecloth on a table, and when I looked up, I saw the same pattern covering the ceiling, the windows and the walls, and finally all over the room, my body, and the universe. I felt as if I had begun to self-obliterate, to revolve in the infinity of endless time and the absoluteness of space, and be reduced to nothingness. Traditional Japanese art and textiles feature repeating patterns that often symbolize features of living, including longevity, good fortune, renewal, and transience of life. Kusama's expansive use of polka dots is seen as a continuation of these cultural traditions. For her, however, polka dots symbolize the infinite nature of the universe by representing boundless points with no conceivable endings, suggesting limitless space and time. Essentially, she creates a physical representation of the concept of infinity. She moved to the United States in 1957 following correspondence with Georgia O'Keeffe, who encouraged her. Her unique and radical artistic language was highly influential. She came to public attention when she organized a series of happenings in the late 1960s in which naked participants were painted with brightly colored polka dots. She also offered to have sex with Richard Nixon if he would end the war in Vietnam. For further context, it is important to remember that she was creating art in a country roiled by hard feelings for Japan. Professor Midori Yamamura, distinguished City University of New York scholar, observed that both Klaus Oldenburg and Andy Warhol were influenced by and copied her ideas. Professor Yamamura further notes that a combination of racism and sexism resulted in funding for Oldenburg and Warhol, while Kusama was ignored. In 1973, Kusama returned to Japan. In 1977, following her father's death, she admitted herself to the Seiwa Hospital for the Mentally Ill in Tokyo. She never checked out. Art therapy offered by the hospital provided a way for her to manage the difficulties of psychosis and possible schizophrenia. Each day, she leaves the facility and crosses the street to her studio. Each night, she returns to the asylum to sleep. In a July 2012 Women's Wear Daily interview, Kusama observed, "Be it a sculpture or be it clothes, for me it is the same thing. It's my creation. I don't see any difference. It's part of my art." In this portrait of Kusama, as well as the image of models wearing her designs, you can see the use of the polka dot, indeed the infinity of the sphere, in the artist's clothing design. Each of the women profiled, magical creatures, in my opinion, led lives complicated by the inevitability of changing fashion and trends, the ever-present patriarchy that threatens to exclude female contributions, and traditional familial tensions that oppose unfettered creative ideas. It has been my pleasure to research this topic and to present it to you today. I hope you found it enjoyable.
Alan, thank you so much for such a lovely paper. Our musical presentation today will feature Tracy Wright, who grew up in a small town in Mississippi County in northeastern Arkansas. She attended the University of Arkansas, graduating with a BA in Speech and Dramatic Arts. It was after college that she discovered an aptitude for bookkeeping. This led to an accounting degree and becoming a CPA in 1986. For over 30 years, Tracy worked in public accounting and also did trust and estate work in banking. Although Tracy was very good with numbers, she always remained active in community theaters everywhere she lived. She has retired from the stage now. However, we're fortunate she's performed 5 delightful musical presentations for our Aesthetic Club. Today, Tracy Rice will announce her own program. Tracy.
The quote today is, I'm going to move this just. Art is everywhere and everywhere is art. But please consider this, artists are everywhere, and we all are artists. Whether we paint, draw, sculpt, sing, dance, or play a musical instrument, or design a building, or make up an impromptu game for a child, we create, and therefore we are artists. Studying theater at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville in the early 1970s, I was fortunate to spend a great deal of time in the Fine Arts Center. This was the first academic building in the nation to combine the arts within a single connected building, from theater, dance, and music to art and architecture. The building's architect, a fellow Arkansan, was Edward Durrell Stone, an artist to be sure. Stone believed that connecting the arts within the same building would create opportunities for students in one discipline to find inspiration and interaction with students from other disciplines. In a theatrical production, there are many, many artists. Now, the costume and makeup designers create the visual appearance of the actors through clothing and accessories to tell the story of the play and immerse the audience in the character's time, world, and culture. A well-designed costume will aid the actor in becoming the character she or he is portraying. 4 of my musical selections today are about clothing of a character in a musical. I will begin with a song by Elton John and Tim Rice from the rock opera Aida. In life, we face a huge assortment of nauseating fads and good advice. There's health and fitness, diet and deportment, and other pointless forms of sacrifice. Conversation, wit, I am a doubter. Manners, charm, that's no way to impress. So forget the inner me, observe the outer. I am what I wear and how I dress. Oh, now I believe in looking like my time on earth is cooking, whether polka dotted, striped, or even checked, with some glamour guaranteeing every fiber of my being is displayed to quite remarkable effect. From your cradle via trousseau to your deathbed, you're on view, so never compromise, accept no substitute. I would rather wear a belt narrow than conservative apparel, for dress has always been my strongest suit. Underwear, overwear, anytime. Staying in or hitting townward, from the top and working downward, I ensure that every stitch is stitched in time. Whether wig or hat or turban, whether bedroom clad or urban, not to strut your stuff outrageously is a crime. For those few who are invited to my wardrobe are delighted as they wander through my things to find a room. Whether negligee or formal, I am anything but normal, 'cause dress has always been my strongest suit. So bring me all my finest, my audacious, my divinest, most revealing, most expensive, and to boot most arresting, most heart-stopping, most free-flowing, most eye-popping, most arresting, most heart-stopping. Yeah, dress has always been my strongest suit, my strongest suit. You know I am what I wear, and dress has always been my strongest suit. Thank you. Now, before we go any farther, I'd like to introduce my company. I think this is the third time Becky Goins has accompanied me. She is an absolute delight to work with and to collaborate with, and I appreciate her so much. Thank you, Becky. The next song has nothing to do with our clothing, but has something to do with an artist. Words and music by Don McLean. Vincent, Starry, Starry Night. Starry, starry night, paint your palette blue and gray. Look out on a summer's day with eyes that know the darkness in my soul, shadows on the hill. Sketch the trees and daffodils, catch the breeze and winter chills in colors on the snowy linen land. Now I understand what you tried to say to me, how you suffered for your sanity, and how you tried to set them free. They would not listen, they did not know how. Perhaps they'll listen now. Starry, starry night, flaming flowers that brightly blaze, swirling clouds in violet haze, reflect in Vincent's eyes of shiny blue, colors changing hue. Morning fills of amber grain, weathered faces lined in pain are soothed beneath the artist's loving hand. Now I understand what you tried to say to me how you suffered for your sanity and how you tried to set them free. They would not listen, they did not know how. Perhaps they'll listen now, for they could not love you, but still their love was true. And when no hope was left inside on that starry, starry night, you took your life as lovers often do. But I could have told you, Vincent, this world was never meant for one as beautiful as you. Like the strangers that you met, the ragged man in ragged clothes, the silver thorn, the bloody rose, lie crushed and broken on the virgin snow. Now I think I know what you tried to say to me, how you suffered for your sanity, and how you tried to set them free. They would not listen, they're not listening still. Perhaps they never will. There is a biblical story about Joseph and his coat of many colors. Featured in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat by Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice, we learn of a father's love for one of his children. Jacob wanted to show the world he loved his son, to make it clear that Joseph was the special one. So Jacob bought his son a coat, a multicolored coat to wear. Joseph's coat was elegant, the cut was fine, the tasteful style were the ultimate in good design. This is why he caught the eye. A king would stop and stare, and when Joseph tried it on, he knew his sheepskin days were gone. Such a dazzling coat of many colors, how he loved his coat of many colors. In a class above the rest, it even went well with his vest. Such a stunning coat of many colors, how he loved his coat of many colors. It was red and yellow and green and brown and blue. Joseph's brothers weren't too pleased with what they saw. They had never liked him all that much before. Now this coat has got their goat. They feel that life's unfair, and when Joseph graced the scene, his brothers turned a shade of green. His astounding clothing took the biscuit, quite the smoothest person in the district. He looked handsome, he looked smart, he was a walking work of art. Such a stunning coat of many colors, how he loved his coat of many colors. It was red and yellow and green and brown and scarlet and black and ochre and peach and ruby and olive and violet and fawn and lilac and gold and chocolate and mauve and cream and crimson and silver and rose and azure and lemon and russet and gray and purple and white and pink and orange and blue. Frank Lesser wrote the words and music to the musical Guys and Dolls. My next song is featured in that. Take Back Your Mink. He bought me this fur thing 5 winters ago, and the gown the following fall. Then the necklace, the bag, the shoes, and the hat. It was late '48, I recall. But last night in his apartment, he tried to remove them all. And I said, as I ran down the hall, take back your mink, take back your pearls. What made you think that I was one of those girls? Take back the gown, the shoes, and the hat. I might be down, but I'm not flat as all that. I thought that each expensive gift you'd arrange was a token of your esteem. Now when I think of what you want in exchange, it all seems a horrible dream. So take back your mink to from whence it came, and tell them to Hollanderize it for some other day. I will conclude the program with a song by Carl Perkins. It may not have been featured in a musical, but it does have an item of clothing, and you're welcome to sing along. Well, it's 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready. Now go, cat, go, but don't you step on my blue suede shoes. Well, you can do anything but lay off my blue suede shoes. Well, you can burn my house, steal my car, drink my liquor from an old fruit jar, but do anything you want to do. But honey, lay off my shoes. Now don't you step on my blue suede shoes. Well, you can do anything but lay off my blue suede shoes. Yeah, you can do anything but lay off my blue suede shoes. Becky Goins, thank you.
Tracy, thank you so much for such a fun and lively presentation this afternoon. Mary Cantwell is our next presenter. She joined Aesthetes in 2020, and she has only just arrived in Little Rock earlier today from a trip to Morocco in Northern Africa. We're thankful that she is here to present her second paper. Mary grew up in Little Rock and graduated from Hollins College in 1974. She has a graduate degree from Peabody, Vanderbilt, and enjoyed a 43-year career in public library management in Columbus, Ohio, and in Little Rock. Having studied in Paris and traveled abroad, Mary was thrilled to be assigned the topic of art restitution and repatriation. Mary Cantrell will present her paper entitled, Where Does Art Belong? Mary?
Madam Secretary, Madam Chairman, fellow aesthetes, and guests, where does art belong? With the rightful owner, of course. Issues ranging from determining ownership in provenance to tomb robbing, trafficking, and forced sales make restitution and repatriation of works of art complex. Restitution is understood as return of cultural objects to an individual or community, while repatriation to a nation or state at the request of the government. A passionate collector may become obsessed with acquisition and possession. Collecting can activate the pleasure center of the brain. Just how did Sir John Soane, the 19th century London architect, acquire the carved alabaster sarcophagus of Seti I for the basement of his home? One Belzoni, explorer and former circus strongman, discovered the tomb of Ramses II's father. Belzoni's initials are still visible on the rim. After the British Museum declined to pay the £2,000 price, Soane quickly purchased it. For collectors today, what are reasons for housing and visiting art in private vaults in a Swiss free port? Free ports being exempt from taxes and customs documents. Museum directors, competing for the greatest works available, have not been immune from the drive to possess and willfully purchased illegally excavated antiquities. Thomas Hoving, former director of the Metropolitan Museum, admitted he had a Rolodex of the best smugglers. The Met has lost major lawsuits against Italy and Turkey and has surrendered hundreds of ancient Mediterranean and Middle Eastern antiquities. A former Getty Museum curator was tried in Rome for receipt of stolen goods and conspiracy to traffic. Though acquitted on an expired statute of limitations, the trial had enormous effect on the museum world. After this sordid chapter, the Getty returned a Macedonian gold wreath to the National Museum in Athens. A number of institutions, prominent collectors, and dealers entered into agreements in the 2010s to relinquish prize examples of Greek, Roman, and Etruscan art to Italy. Increased resources to deepen provenance research for the origin, source, and clear history of ownership of a work have come about after collection seizures and repatriation ceremonies. Looting did not begin 200 years ago. Grave robbing is almost as old as the pharaohs themselves. However, a mania in the 19th century took hold. The obelisk in the Place de la Concorde in Paris is a trophy of Napoleon's first campaign in Egypt. Erected in 1836, it is one of a pair. The other remains at the Temple of Luxor. Placement of the obelisk was not casual. It's a prestigious location, and had no connection to this site of the guillotine and the revolution. The year before, 1835, Greece began asking the British Museum to return the Parthenon marbles. Who owns the treasures of antiquity? The Benin bronzes are a case in point. The most famous example of cultural looting by the British Empire came in 1897 with the punitive expedition to Benin, present-day Nigeria, leading to the removal of Benin plaques and sculptures known collectively as the Benin bronzes. The operation destroyed the cultural history and memory of the kingdom. These copper alloy castings plaques, and artworks constituted historical records or spiritual objects. Statues represented rulers dating back to the 12th century. While others were keeping their records in longhand and in hieroglyphs, the people of Benin cast theirs and carved on ivory and wood. For centuries, Benin had been a flourishing kingdom, which had entertained trade relations with the Portuguese and Dutch, among other things, slaves. The city was described by travelers as prosperous and civilized. Without approval of the Foreign Office, but in response to an earlier ambush by Benin chiefs, the large expeditionary force invaded and fought Beninese warriors. The British characterized their attacks as justified to protect and expand control to facilitate British economic interests. They removed Oba Ovamruan, king of Benin. His palace was burned, he was exiled, and the treasures of the kingdom were used to finance the expedition. For the people of Benin, it was invasion and assumed annexation. Now disputed, British reports fueled initial perceptions that the objects were artifacts of savages. British soldiers collected carved ivory stock and removed ceremonial brass heads of former Obas. They took as official war booty more than 900 alloy plaques. It is estimated that at least 3,000 pieces of bronze and ivory works were removed. The artifacts quickly metamorphosed from ritual objects of savages to being appreciated for their aesthetic merit and antiquity. They became the most highly prized of all African art. Auctions and private collecting began. The British Museum received 203 objects, a donation from the Foreign Office. Throughout the 20th century, the Benin objects were considered works of art and became the source of inspiration for modernist artists. Their violent acquisition was concealed in official narratives. The objects were rebranded as international heritage, which belongs to humanity. As universities and museums began returning or agreeing to repatriate the bronzes to Nigeria, the story is not straightforward. There is the pre-colonial history of hundreds of thousands of enslaved people whose descendants now demand a share in ownership of the bronzes. British and Nigerian officials trade accusations of negligence and poor preservation, to wit the British Museum's recent internal thefts, and the National Museum Lagos losses, where 80 of 400 bronzes remain. The head of the former royal family in Benin City claims sole ownership of all bronzes. The British Museum identifies in no way the origins of the Benin bronzes in its collection, nor has the museum returned any. It is prohibited from permanently removing any item from its collection by a 1963 law. For its part, the Louvre is also beset with demands for return of art. Opened in 1783 with the crown jewels, it is the oldest, largest, and most visited museum in the world. It is an arm of the French state and a pillar of France's own cultural identity. It holds 77,404 Egyptian artifacts. A hero of the Nazi plunder story is Rose Valland. She is one of the most decorated women in French history. In 1941, Valland became overseer of the Jeu de Paume Museum in Paris under German occupation. The German systematic looting of artworks from museums and private collections throughout France had already begun. The Jeu de Paume was their central storage and sorting depot, pending distribution to Germany. Valland began secretly recording as much as possible of the more than 20,000 pieces of art brought to the Jeu de Paume. Hidden from the Germans was the fact she understood German. Vallon risked her life over 4 years to keep track of where and to whom artwork was being shipped. She gave information to the resistance about railroad shipments so trains loaded with France's art treasures would not be mistakenly blown up. Vallon was present at the museum the day Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring came to personally select stolen paintings for his own private collection. Weeks before liberation, Vallon gave her boss, Jacques Chaujar, a list of 967 paintings, including works by Braque, Cézanne, Degas, and others that filled 5 train cars and were to be hooked to another 48 cars not yet loaded. A fortunate rail strike occurred which further delayed this train behind others filled with fleeing Germans. Train number 40044 then experienced a mechanical breakdown. Tracks were blocked farther ahead. Following the liberation of Paris, Vallon was arrested as a collaborationist due to her work at the Jeu de Paume, but was soon released. In touch with American Captain James Warmore of the Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archives program, she turned over her most important records, which led to multiple repositories of looted art in southern Germany. Her records assisted in speeding the return of looted art to their rightful owners. As a captain in the French army, at the Nuremberg trial, she confronted Hermann Göring about the works he had stolen. After the war, Vallon continued her work with the National Museums and received numerous awards, including the Medal of Freedom from President Truman. A French stamp in her honor was issued in 2018. While thousands of works were returned to families who could be identified, other works entered into national collections in France and elsewhere. In 1995, the State Hermitage Museum St. Petersburg exhibited a group of French paintings hidden for decades. These masterpieces were stolen twice, by the Nazis and then by Soviet troops as Germany fell. This trophy art has been held as reparation for German war atrocities. These 67 Impressionist and Post-Impressionist paintings are from the private German collections of Otto Gerstenberg and Otto Krebs. Their heirs have open claims on these works. However, in 1998, Russia passed the federal law on cultural valuables displaced to the USSR as a result of the Second World War and located on the territory of the Russian Federation, which allowed Russian institutions to keep art and museum pieces looted during the war. One example of repatriation by the USSR was Raphael's Sistine Madonna, saved from the Dresden firebombing and returned to East Germany in 1955 on the table. Restitutions have been bolstered by Maria Altman's success with Klimt's Adele Blackbauer won The Woman in Gold. Purchased for $135 million by cosmetics heir Ronald Lauder, it is now exhibited in his new gallery in New York. All works there are labeled with full provenance and exception in museum practice. That's awesome. There is agreement in the imperative for the return of Nazi-looted art to heirs, but questions surrounding heritage justice for the repatriation of cultural artifacts, also art to people who were robbed of their history, are fraught with ambivalence. The rape of Europa, the rape of Africa. Is it for those who have possessed the works to also have a say in their destination or their future? There may be room for shared ownership or long-term loans to museums with holdings from colonial periods. Another way forward could be digital repatriation. Ludi, a London collective, is virtually reclaiming artifacts that were plundered and in Western museums. Ludi gives people from former colonies who are unable to travel to the West three-dimensional replicas and knowledge of their stolen treasures. Museums may still control the physical objects, but with the power of digital, the narrative can be rewritten. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. We're glad you made it home in time to give us that most informative paper. Just a reminder, if you didn't get an opportunity to sign in when you arrived this afternoon, please be sure to do that. And if there's no further business, this meeting is adjourned. And happy Thanksgiving.